He sits at the edge of the playground not out of loneliness, but because something is unfolding within him. The swings move slowly in the background like distant planets. Voices rise and fall around him. The world is busy and loud. He listens, not to respond, but to understand. Behind his quiet lies a full, complex life. One filled with careful observation, small routines, private experiments, and long, thoughtful questions no one has asked. People often mistake quiet for absence. They gauge presence by noise, by rapid replies, by immediate performance. But a quiet child is far from empty. They are deep, a reservoir. From the outside, silence may appear as distance. From the inside, it is deliberate cultivation. This difference between perception and experience is at the root of what we often misunderstand about quietness. Why do some children choose silence? Sometimes it is simply temperament. Some are born with nervous systems that favor low stimulation, finding stillness soothing. Other times, silence develops as a form of protection. In homes where speaking out invited criticism, where emotion was inconvenient, a young mind learns to self-soothe by withdrawing. In classrooms that prioritize speed and participation, quietness is often seen as a flaw rather than a strength. Yet neither temperament nor defense explains everything. Quiet children often carry a paradox. They are socially aware in their own way, yet cautious about conventional forms of engagement. They notice patterns that others overlook. While many rush to be heard, they see who is excluded, the subtle moments of hurt, the shift in a teacher's expression when someone struggles. Listening becomes their craft. They gather impressions like stones. Over time, those stones transform into metaphors, sentences, inventions, music, the raw material of creativity. Consider the poets and scientists who began as observers rather than speakers. In silence, they learned to accumulate insight. In silence, they explored the textures of the world before taking any action. Yet silence is delicate. It exists in a society that rewards performance and instant response. The quiet child often internalizes one damaging message. You must be louder to be noticed, to be loved. So they adapt. Some put on a mask, learning to imitate the extroverted behaviors they observe around them, in classrooms, on stages, or in everyday life. Masking consumes energy and can make the inner self feel colder. Others withdraw even more, believing the world will never slow down enough to meet them. What begins as a protective strategy often becomes a lifelong negotiation between their true self and outside expectations. There's also a subtle moral dimension here. Quiet children are frequently seen as obedient, well-behaved, or easy to manage. Adults relax, but being easy does not mean being nurtured. A child who doesn't demand attention may simply not be receiving it. In families and schools, attention is sometimes given not based on need but on volume. The child who shouts is heard first. The child who whispers must wait. Those long waits add up. They are small withdrawals from the heart's ledger that, over time, build into an unspoken entitlement to silence. Expecting less, asking less, believing your needs are optional. This is where the mind folds inward. Quietness can be both a chapel and a prison. The chapel is where reflection sparks insight. The prison is where self-erasure becomes routine. The quiet child learns to see their own voice as risky. They practice the sentences they wish they could say, and then choose not to speak them. They become skilled in apology as a form of protection. "Sorry, I don't mean to bother," comes even before a word is spoken. Eventually, the apology becomes an identity, a survival mechanism under the belief that their presence is an imposition. And yet, there is a unique power in that apology. Quiet people, when they finally speak, are often heard. Their words are like rare coins, carefully spent, impossible to ignore. But being noticed doesn't always mean being understood. The quiet person's language is often indirect, symbolic, or deliberate. Modern conversation prizes quick responses and witty remarks. When someone offers a slow, thoughtful idea, the group may miss the thread. The quiet child then learns to shrink their words to match the pace of others. What could help us rethink this dynamic is to see silence not as a flaw, but as a trait worthy of respect. Silence is not passive. It is patient. It restrains snap judgment. It allows complexity to surface. Imagine a world where we value the slow responder just as much as the quick one. Imagine meetings where the first 10 seconds are intentionally left empty, giving quiet minds the space to share something truly original. Most of our social structures, classrooms, open plan offices, team meetings, favor speed over depth. The quiet child often exists in a world built against their natural rhythm. There's another layer to consider: the pain of misunderstanding. The quiet child who internalizes messages can be as harsh on themselves as the world is silent toward them. They measure their worth against the noise around them, and often find themselves lacking. They may believe that their introspection is a flaw, and that their long silences signal brokenness. During adolescence, as peers shape their identity around visibility, social media profiles, likes, public recognition, the quiet teen can feel increasingly out of sync. What once felt like a rich inner life now seems like a liability. The hidden self begins to crave permission to be seen, an unspoken plea. You may look, but do you truly understand what's here? Sometimes the quiet child grows into an adult who leans into their own invisibility. They work behind the scenes, take on supporting roles, and keep their ambitions modest, not because they lack skill, but because they were never taught to occupy space. Yet in other cases, the quiet child's inner life becomes a source of a different kind of leadership born of observation. A leader who listens first, models patience, and notices the shy person in the room, making space for them. A quiet person's ability to hold complexity can become an extraordinary resource in any community that learns to value it. So, how do we care for the quiet child? The first step is validation without demanding performance. Welcome their slow replies instead of filling the silence for them. Ask open-ended questions that encourage exploration rather than interrogation. Offer roles that emphasize reflection over reaction. The recorder of ideas, the curator of projects, the observer who maps the flow of group dynamics. These roles do not make them less social. They honor their nature and provide meaningful ways to contribute. We also need to teach the quiet child skills for translation, how to turn their rich inner world into expressions that others can access when necessary. This isn't about forcing them to be outgoing. It's about offering tools, small rehearsals before social events, templates for starting conversations, signals they can use when they need time to think. Imagine teaching a child to say, "I'm processing, give me 5 minutes," as a normal part of social interaction. That simple rule could transform how we understand the rhythm of thought and speech. There's a philosophical lesson here too. In a world that confuses speed with wisdom, quietness is a corrective. It reminds us that thinking is not speaking, and listening is not silence. The quiet child invites us to slow down, to reflect, to notice. Their presence raises a deeper question. What does it mean to be fully present without dominating? How can we design societies that reward depth over spectacle? Yet the challenges are real. Quiet children are more likely to be overlooked in evaluations, passed over for leadership roles, or misjudged as disengaged. The stakes are high. Without intentional support, a quiet child may develop a story of invisibility, believing their voice is unnecessary, and that belief can shape their entire life. At the edge of this conversation lies a quiet revolution. What if we redesigned classrooms, workplaces, and families so the quiet voice had both protection and amplification? What if slow thinkers were given the first chance to speak because they need it most? What if our cultural default assumed depth rather than drama? These aren't just theoretical questions, they are practical ones that shape futures. The child under the maple tree, the one watching the swings and listening for the subtle rhythm of meaning, can be guided into an adulthood that honors their gift rather than punishes it. They can be taught to translate, to assert gently, and to step confidently into the world with their voice fully recognized. To find companions who enjoy conversation that unfolds naturally, and to inhabit spaces without needing to shout. There is a recurring paradox. The quieter you are, the more room you create for others to be loud. Yet as the world grows louder, the quiet becomes increasingly vital. So the question is not how to amplify the quiet, but how to make the world truly listen. This requires rethinking value, attention, and the very design of our shared spaces. If you find yourself in this quiet, remember this: your silence is not a weakness. It is a flexible strength. It can serve as armor, a prison, or a sanctuary, depending on how you treat it. The goal is not to eliminate quiet, but to learn to guide it, to let it be both a refuge and a tool, both a safe harbor and a megaphone when needed. There is a way for the quiet to teach the loud how to listen, and for the loud to teach the quiet how to be seen. The bridge between these ways is practice, patience, and the willingness to reshape the expectations we inherit. Pause for a moment and reflect. There is more to explore: how quietness shapes different adult archetypes, how silence intersects with creativity and leadership, and the practical habits a quiet person can adopt to flourish without becoming someone they are not. Yet, being the quiet one comes with hidden struggles. He is often underestimated. Teachers overlook him for leadership roles. Friends forget to invite him, assuming he wouldn't want to join. In group conversations, his ideas are ignored until someone else repeats them louder, and suddenly it is brilliant. It is a peculiar kind of invisibility, one that makes you feel both present and absent at the same time. And yet, in that invisibility lies freedom. The quiet child can move through life without the constant performance others feel pressured to maintain. He can observe without being observed. He can learn without the constant need to prove himself. This is why many quiet kids develop rich inner lives. They have space to think deeply, feel deeply, and dream without interruption. But here's the paradox of silence is striking. The very quiet that protects him can also isolate him. People often misread his stillness as disinterest, his shyness as arrogance, and his boundaries as walls. This misunderstanding can hurt deeply, especially when he wants to connect but struggles to bridge the gap between his inner world and the noise outside. Many quiet kids carry a quiet ache, a longing for someone to understand them without explanations. And there's a reason so many of them grow into thinkers, writers, artists, and innovators. They've spent years observing the world without always participating, giving them space to truly understand it. They notice how people move when no one is watching, see flaws in systems everyone else accepts, and recognize patterns before they become obvious. In their own way, they shape the world, not with noise but with precision. Yet the journey of a quiet kid has its risks. Silence can become self-erasure if it stems from fear rather than choice. Being told your voice doesn't matter enough times can make you believe it. Being dismissed repeatedly when trying to speak can make you stop altogether. Over time, the quiet kid may hide not only his voice but parts of himself. Still, quietness is not about being less, it's about being more. More observant, more thoughtful, more deliberate. The quiet kid doesn't need to shout to make an impact. He doesn't need to dominate the room to influence it. Often, the most powerful presence is the one who doesn't fight to be heard, because true influence isn't measured by volume, it's measured by presence. Perhaps this is the quiet kid's greatest gift. While the world reacts in haste, he studies, he understands. While others speak to fill silence, he waits until his words matter. In a world drowning in noise, the one who can sit in stillness and listen sees the clearest. Sometimes the quiet kid isn't just watching, he's learning. And one day when the time is right, he will speak, and the world will realize it should have listened sooner.